Okay, so thanks for joining today. I hope you're all well and enjoying the sunshine. I thought that this would be a good time for us to have a look at the employee wellbeing side post-lockdown. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of changes. A lot of people seem to be reverting to business as usual now, and there's a lot of things that we need to consider from an employee wellbeing perspective. So hopefully some of these tips and support will help with you managing this for your returning employees, or for those who are still on furlough if that's the case. So the agenda for today will be surrounding awareness, communication, employee benefits, flexible working, and to keep calm and carry on. These are the things that I think are probably the best fits for the employee wellbeing agenda at this time post-pandemic. So if we'll explore some of those and also give you some tips along the way. So I think awareness is a really critical thing that we all need to consider at the moment, because obviously things have affected people disproportionately when it comes to the pandemic and COVID. So I think developing our awareness about other people's circumstances is really important at this time, and it'll help us help guide and form how we deal basically with any fallout from the pandemic as people do return to work. So the things to consider are people's individual, family and financial situations. As I say, this has affected a lot of people disproportionately. So I think it's important that when your employees are returning to work, you consider the fact that some of them may have lost people to COVID during the lockdown. Their financial situations may have changed, so there may have been a lot of people whose maybe partners or family members have been made redundant, so now they're suffering from the fallout of that and maybe have a bit more financial strain and personal stresses going on at home. So I think it's really important that we are aware of that, because we do have a duty of care to people, so it's important that that is managed. Also, people's own health concerns or those for their family. I think obviously people have varying degrees of health concerns when it comes to COVID. Some people may be more vulnerable and more at risk than others. So, if some people do come to work and are concerned about the practices that the company have in place to protect them, or seem a bit more anxious than other people, then I think it's really important that you do take consideration that people's health concerns are very individual to them, and also obviously those of their family, because everyone will have different circumstances at home or within their family, where some people may be suffering from health conditions, maybe perhaps more than other people, and they're obviously inevitably going to be a bit more cautious. Another thing would be to consider people's varying perception of risk relating to COVID, because I think we all probably perceive it very differently depending on our own personal views and circumstances. So I've noticed myself where I've had a lot of sort of mixed views and opinions about the risk, and some people wearing masks, some people not wanting to wear masks. But I think it's important that as an employer you're just aware that whatever your views are, or wherever the sort of general consensus are within your working environment, is that everybody's completely individual and their risk perception will vary probably dramatically from person to person. And just generally the effect that change has on people. This has been the biggest global change. It's completely unprecedented. So change really affects people in different ways and has a big impact on them. And I think given the scale of this change, it's really important that we appreciate that. I think it's probably a bit easier when you are behind the business and you are aware of what's going on, and you're able to manage your change and sort of orchestrate it a little bit, whereas a lot of your employees will just be sort of waiting for you to guide the ship. So it's important that you're aware that the change in the world will have had an effect on them and their well-being. So some tips to consider for this. It probably is sensible if your staff are either still on furlough or maybe returning gradually or on a part-time basis. If they haven't all returned yet, it would be sensible to conduct a return to work with those when they do come back off furlough, because even though they haven't been off with sickness absence, it is still a period of absence away from the business. Things may have changed since then, and I think it's important that you meet with them and try to understand really what concerns they've got, if any. So obviously you will have done your risk assessments and you will have made everybody aware of what you've put in place before they do come back. But I think if people have got their individual concerns, it'd be sensible to meet with them, sort of welcome them back to the company, inform them what you've done to support with their return, and also give them the opportunity to raise any additional concerns that they may have relating to them as an individual. Check in on employees. So for those who are on furlough and those who are back in the office or back in the working environment, it's important that you do check in to see how things are going, because I think I've seen a varying degree really of returns, where some people have done it very gradually, some people may have not returned at all yet, and some people have been very much like, right, we're back to business and we're moving forward, which is great. Obviously the business needs to keep moving, but I think it's important that we don't undermine what has happened recently, and just check in on people to see how they are feeling and how they're coping with change and returning to work. And also those who are working from home, because I think if people are working from home and they're being very productive and there's a lot of output, you may just tend to think that everything's fine. But again, I think it's important that you check in on them as well. Provides a platform for people to raise their individual concerns. So often people are find it quite difficult to come forward about raising their individual concerns, and that could be for a number of reasons. So they may think that they feel embarrassed coming forward about something, or they don't know who the right person to raise those concerns with are. So if you give your staff a platform to raise them, so you offer them maybe meetings, or ask them to just come in and see you if they've got any concerns, or even drop an email and say, you know, you're checking in to see how everything's going, how everyone is finding everything recently. Obviously there's a lot of news at the moment out there that potential future lockdowns, which people may be worrying about. So maybe just drop people an email, even if you can't facilitate meetings, or you don't think there's a need for that, just to give them an opportunity to come back to you and raise anything that they are concerned about. And be aware of the impact of any further changes. So if there's any changes to either the business or obviously the environment that we're in at the moment, where there's a lot of people having local lockdowns and there's talks of national lockdowns, that's another change, while people have just got back to work, and some people may be getting back to normal and getting used to and familiar with that routine again. We also need to be aware really of the impact that any further changes, whether inside the workplace or outside the workplace, will have on their well-being. So communicate, I guess it goes without saying, but sometimes it's easy for us all to forget this as well, and how much attention we need to pay to it really, because communication is absolutely key during times of uncertainty, and the absence of communication just creates ambiguity, and people do often misunderstand the situation and think the worst. So if you're not communicating, that may just be because everything actually is okay in the business and you haven't really needed to give any bad news, or maybe things are just okay but they're not great, so you haven't really been able to give any good news. I think it's still important to communicate the situation either way. Employees need information about their future and that of the business, because obviously everybody at the moment is in a position where everything seems very uncertain. There'll be a lot of news of redundancies, on the media. There may be redundancies in your business, and it makes people worry and wonder about their future. So any information that you can give to them about that is really crucial, and will go a long way in helping them feel a bit more relaxed and not worry too much. And as I said earlier, if people have had financial strain on them in their personal life, with maybe partners who have lost their jobs or faced redundancy, then this kind of information is really important to them. So some ways that you could keep your communication fluid during this time would be to schedule business updates. So if that's not something that you do already, you could maybe put in some quarterly meetings, maybe, or monthly meetings. It doesn't have to be War and Peace, just something like a quick update. We're doing okay at the moment, or this is what we're thinking for the next 3 months, or we've had to claw back on this, and just give people a bit of an idea of how the business is doing, and any other important information that they need to know, because it's important at this time that you do try and keep your employees that you have engaged. Reassure people where possible. So I know that some businesses have actually done very well or continue to perform as normal during the pandemic and the lockdown. So if that is the case and you do have positive news to say, then it'd be really helpful if you did communicate that to people, because in these uncertain times people want to hear good news, and any reassurance that you can give will help with the general anxiety and stress levels at the time. Be transparent about the business's financial situation. I think a lot of employers tend to be quite nervous about doing this, and I totally understand the reasons why, but I think it's actually really important that you are transparent where possible about the financial situation. So if things are doing great, then you can communicate that. If things aren't doing so great, or you may be thinking that you may have to make some clawbacks in the future, it's just about how you communicate that. So at least you're being honest and you're keeping people aware of the situation. That's not so that you scare them and say, oh, we could be making redundancies in 6 months' time, because to give somebody that kind of news with such a long time frame is not helpful for anybody. But if things aren't doing great at the moment, maybe if you could just be transparent about that situation, at least people are a bit more aware of things and it wouldn't come as much as a shock. Sometimes I think if you're not being honest about it, people can maybe think that the situation is even worse than it is. And consider sending out a staff survey. So this is something that some of you may do already, just generally, and if it's not, then it may be something that you want to consider moving forward. So if you send out a staff survey, you could cover a number of points. It could be based on engagement, and there's some factors of engagement that we can support you with to incorporate that. But it may be that you just want to have your own survey to just think about a few things that you want feedback on, and to a bit of a pulse survey really to check the health of your business and how people are doing. So it could include things like communication, line management support, teamwork. You could send out those surveys and get people's response rates and how they feel the business is performing in each of those areas. Then you can look to identify where there's any gaps and fill them by making some changes. So that could be by, for example, an outcome could be scheduling more frequent business updates, or doing more teamwork together. Employee benefits. I think if you are in a position at this time, which I totally understand that a lot of people aren't probably spending a lot at the moment, but if you do have any funds that you could put towards benefits, then maybe direct them towards some wellbeing aspects. So if, for example, you used to provide monthly drinks for the team, and obviously that's not possible anymore with the COVID restrictions, maybe you could consider giving that budget towards some wellbeing aspects. And they don't always have to be costly or of monetary value at all if that's not something that you're in a position to give, but it's definitely something worth considering. So a couple of examples of employee benefits that I've found have worked really well in some of the companies that I've support to implement these. So you could maybe consider some subsidised massages or yoga classes. So again, that if you have that drinks budget, for example, you could maybe spend it on that instead. We have a client who does this at the moment and it works really well. You could invest in office bikes. So again, this is based on the idea from another client. They have a couple of shared bikes in the office, so they encourage their staff to go out cycling on their lunchtime just to help them clear the head, and obviously get their exercise in and really improve their well-being on office whilst in the office. You could create chill out or relaxation spaces if you have the capacity to do that. So maybe just a little area or a spare room that you have in the office that you could maybe just put some comfortable chairs in and encourage people either on the lunch breaks or between meetings to just go and chill out and relax if they're feeling overwhelmed at any time. You could consider increasing lunch time. So if you maybe only have say a 30-minute lunch, you could maybe consider extending that to 45 minutes so that people could maybe eat their lunch and also go for a little walk in the meantime, because obviously walking and getting their exercise in, it will improve their well-being. Offer flexible working where possible. I think this has probably been critical for most organisations because the world of work and the way that we work has changed. And I think if people have worked from home, they'll be very aware now of the ability to work from home if it has worked successfully for you. So I'd maybe consider offering some types of flexible working if that's possible, either later start times or and later finish times, or just the option of working from home a couple of days a week, because I think a lot of people who may have worked from home successfully for 5 days a week may be a bit anxious now about reverting back to the rush that you have of getting into the office and commuting or using public transport. So again, if people are giving you feedback that those home working facilities have helped with their well-being and they may feel a little bit less stressed or less rushed off the feet, if you can consider implementing that, then that would be great. You could introduce some team wellbeing initiatives such as after work walks or even lunchtime walks if possible, and push for that, because I've heard a lot in the news lately about the drinking culture that has came out of lockdown. So it would be great now if we can start focusing on encouraging wellbeing from a health perspective, because again, this will help eliminate any further issues that you may have further down the line, such as absence issues, if people are not really taking care of themselves at the moment. And also to promote volunteering days. So this is something that quite a few organisations do at the moment, and that's because giving and volunteering is linked to positive well-being and the way people feel about themselves. So if you're able to, you could maybe allow employees, could only would have to be maybe one afternoon or one day per year or a couple of days per year, where they can tell you that they're going to volunteer to do some charity work maybe, and you give them that time off paid to go and take part in those volunteering days. As I said before, I think being flexible is really important, and we've all seen recently how we've had to adapt and we've had to be flexible. So I think if your employees have shown flexibility towards you and supported you during this time, then it's great if you could return that. And if it has worked and the working from home or different start times or working around childcare or whatever has worked, and there's no reason why you can't continue with that, then I think it would send a really positive message to your staff and support their well-being if you're able to continue with this. So where practical, you can be flexible, and it could include working from home or allowing later start and finish times to avoid peak transport times, because I think I would certainly vouch for the fact that not having that commute to work and getting stuck in traffic, which is never a great start to anybody's day, that really helped my mindset of a morning when I didn't have to have that sort of stressful hour before I got to work. Where employees are not comfortable attending face-to-face meetings for whatever reason relating to COVID and their health or their family's health, you should really try and facilitate Zoom or Microsoft Teams meetings where possible. And I know that a lot of people have tried to just get back to normal and encourage face-to-face meetings because it is very important that we do maintain them. If anybody does raise any individual concerns about health and safety, you just need to be a bit mindful of that, because there's a statutory right regarding health and safety concerns if they can evidence that it's a genuine concern that they have for themselves. Obviously, if you do get that situation, then just give us a call and we can advise you further. But I just think it's better that you continue to facilitate those virtual meetings where possible, rather than enforcing face-to-face meetings for people who do feel uncomfortable still. And be mindful of things like staggered school times and allow employees to work around those. I know that a lot of schools have changed their start and finish times now, so your child may start at 9:30 and finish at 2:30, for example. So you need to make sure that you're trying to accommodate that and realising that it's out of the employee's hands when it comes to school working days. So if there has been any changes, if you can facilitate that, that would be really great as well. And lastly, keep calm and carry on. I think a lot of us have put general life on hold as the uncertainty around the pandemic has forced us to plan less. So I think, you know, you may have had a lot of plans in the pipeline, whether that be business related or team related. And I think a lot of us have sort of stopped planning. I know I certainly have. You know, I'm not planning ahead much in terms of my personal life, and I'm sure a lot of people are the same, because we're not sure how the restrictions will change. But that's not to say that the plans around your employees should also come to a halt, because they are still returning to work, and when they are back in your workplace, while I'm sure they appreciate that things have changed and can't be planned in as much, it's still important that you don't forget about them and forget that they are employees, and you know, they may have just resumed their journey as before they left it with the company. So it's important that development plans for employees continue, even if they have changed. So even if you had plans for employees to maybe have promotions or work towards different areas of the business, which may have changed now given the climate has changed, and you may not be able to forecast the same way you had pre-lockdown. An area of the business may not have materialised, or you may have lost clients. So of course it's difficult to continue with any plans that may have been in place before if they're not possible. But I think it's definitely important that you still carry on with those development plans for staff, but maybe just change them. So if it's not to move into another role, it may be to just do better in the role they are, or continue to do very well in that role, and you can support them with that. Consider scheduling appraisals and giving employees some feedback and direction where possible. So I'm sure you can still give them feedback on the work that they're doing at the moment, and even if you can't give them, you know, very clear direction in terms of where you think they may be in 3 months or 6 months, you can certainly still help them improve in the job that they're doing now. And whether getting back to business as usual or business completely differently, it is important that those things that have worked well and can still carry on, do so. So, you know, if you've had things like monthly drinks after work, if you've had team days out or team briefings, even if those aren't possible in terms of the face-to-face capacity now, maybe just change them to a virtual, in a virtual capacity. So if you've had things that have worked really well, such as team updates or days where you've got together and had like a think about the business, and you've all pulled in and thought about some good ideas, you could still facilitate those. It just may be that you may have to change them virtually. So generally, to summarise on that, what I would say is anything you can still keep in place, then you should, but maybe just consider changing it to suit our new normal, I guess, and the change of circumstances. I thought it'd just be useful as well in terms of additional support, just on the things that I'd mentioned, to let you know about additional support that HBC can provide, because some of you may not be aware of the scope for that. So we can support with engagement initiatives, such as the pulse surveys, creating engagement committees, and we can also support with formulating a HR strategy. If you have perhaps looked at your business, decided that things have changed and the direction of your staff needs to change with that, then we can also support with formulating those HR strategies for the future. And thank you for attending today. So if you do have any questions or you'd like any further information about how we can support, just please contact help@highperformanceconsultancy.com and one of us will give you a call. So I'll just unmute you all now, and if anybody has any questions or wants to raise anything, you can do so. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay, well, if you do have any questions and you need any further help with anything, obviously just drop me an email or drop help@highperformance an email, and we can support further.